a scream pierces the night as a woman's life ends on the 450 from Paddington, her red scarf fluttering in a killer's grip, seen only by Elspeth McGillicuddy through a fleeting train window. At Rutherford Hall, where greed festers among the Krakenthorpe family, secrets unravel. A blood-stained barn, a hidden will, a poisoned glass. Who was Anna Stravinska, and why did her knowledge spark murder? Can Miss Marple and Lucy Eyelesbarrow unmask a cunning killer before another life is claimed? Step aboard for a twisting ride of deception and danger.
Chapter 1. A Glimpse of Death. The December air bit at Elspeth McGillicuddy's knuckles as she clutched her shopping bags, their handles digging into her palms like thin, unyielding wires. London's Christmas bustle had drained her. Queues snaking through department stores, carols warbling over crackling speakers, and the endless jostle of elbows in Oxford Street's glittering chaos. Now, at 4:50 p.m., she sank gratefully into the plush seat of the train departing Paddington Station, bound for Brackhampton, and eventually St. Mary Mead. The carriage smelled faintly of coal dust and polished wood, and the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks promised a reprieve from the city's clamor. Elspeth, a sturdy woman in her 60s with a no-nonsense bun of graying hair, adjusted her spectacles and set her bags at her feet. Her tweed coat, sensible but slightly frayed at the cuffs, was buttoned against the chill seeping through the window. She'd planned this trip for weeks, a quick jaunt to London for Christmas gifts, followed by a cozy stay with her old friend Jane Marple in St. Mary Mead. The thought of Jane's quiet cottage, with its crackling fire and sharp-eyed hostess, brought a flicker of warmth to her tired bones. The train was sparsely populated, its passengers a mix of weary shoppers and somber businessmen, their faces half hidden behind newspapers or lost in the fog of their own thoughts. Elspeth's compartment held only a young woman in a fur-trimmed hat knitting furiously, and an elderly man dozing with a pipe dangling from his lips. The dim light of the carriage lamps cast long shadows, and the windows reflected a ghostly version of the interior blurring into the darkening countryside beyond. Elspeth pulled a novel from her bag, a dog-eared detective story she'd bought on impulse at a station bookstall. She tried to focus on the words, but her eyes drifted to the window, where the world outside was a streak of gray and green. The train's steady rhythm lulled her, and she might have dozed, but for a sudden jolt as another train roared alongside, its windows flashing like a reel of film. The two trains ran parallel, their speeds matched for a fleeting moment, and Elspeth's gaze wandered to the illuminated compartments opposite. That's when she saw it. In the window of the neighboring train, not 10 feet away, a curtain twitched open. The light inside was harsh, almost clinical, revealing a man and a woman in stark silhouette. The man, broad-shouldered and faceless in the glare, had his hands around the woman's throat. Her head was tilted back, her mouth open in a silent scream, her hands clawing at his wrists. Elspeth's breath caught, her book slipping to her lap. The scene was vivid, brutal, a tableau of violence frozen in the amber of the train's light. The woman's body arched, then sagged, her limbs going limp as the man's grip tightened. For a heartbeat, Elspeth thought she saw the woman's eyes meet hers, wide with terror, pleading across the void. Then, as swiftly as it had appeared, the curtain snapped shut. The other train veered away, its red tail light swallowed by the dusk. Elspeth sat rigid, her heart hammering against her ribs. Had she imagined it? The knitting woman across from her clicked her needles, oblivious. The old man's pipe bobbed as he snored. The carriage felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker, as if the horror she had witnessed had seeped through the glass. She pressed her hands to her cheeks, willing her pulse to slow. It was real, she whispered to herself, the words barely audible over the train's rumble. She wasn't one for fancies. Her life in Scotland had been one of practicality, of balancing ledgers and tending to her late husband's farm. But this was no trick of the light, no daydream born of exhaustion. She had seen a murder. A woman strangled, her life snuffed out in a fleeting, awful instant. Elspeth's mind raced. She had to tell someone. But who? The conductor? The police? She glanced at the knitting woman, who caught her eye and offered a polite smile. "Everything all right, dear?" she asked, her needles pausing. Elspeth hesitated, her throat dry. I saw something," she managed, her voice trembling. "On the other train. A man. He was hurting a woman. I think she's dead." The woman's smile faltered, her brows knitting together. "Oh, my! Are you sure? It's easy to mistake things in the dark with the trains moving so fast." "No, I'm certain," Elspeth said, her voice gaining strength. "I saw his hands around her throat. She was struggling, and then she wasn't." The words spilled out, sharp and urgent, as if speaking them could anchor the truth.
The knitting woman leaned forward, her eyes wide. "Good heavens! You must tell the conductor at once. There's one just down the carriage." Elspeth nodded, gathering her bags with shaking hands. She stood, her legs unsteady, and made her way to the corridor, where a conductor in a crisp blue uniform was checking tickets. He was a wiry man with a mustache that twitched like a metronome. "Excuse me," Elspeth said, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. "I need to report something terrible." The conductor turned, his expression one of polite boredom. "Yes, madam? Lost your ticket?" "No, it's not that." Elspeth lowered her voice, aware of curious glances from nearby passengers. "I saw a murder. On the train running beside us, just a few minutes ago, a man was strangling a woman in one of the compartments." The conductor's mustache stilled, his eyes narrowing. "A murder, you say? That's a serious claim. Are you certain it wasn't a quarrel, perhaps, or a trick of the light?" "I know what I saw," Elspeth snapped, her Scottish burr sharpening. "The woman was fighting for her life. She's dead, I'm sure of it. You must do something. Contact the police. Stop the other train." The conductor hesitated, scratching his chin. "Well, now, that's not so simple. The trains diverge at the next junction. Could you describe the man or the woman?" Elspeth clenched her fists, frustration bubbling. "It was too quick, and the light was bright. The man was tall, broad. The woman had dark hair, I think, and a scarf. Red, maybe. Please, you have to believe me." "I'll report it at Brackhampton," the conductor said, his tone placating. "We'll inform the authorities, and they'll look into it. Best you sit tight, madam. Can I have your name and address?" Elspeth gave her details, her voice clipped, and returned to her seat. The knitting woman was gone, replaced by a young man reading a racing form. Elspeth stared out the window, the countryside now cloaked in darkness. The image of the woman's limp body haunted her, a ghost imprinted on her eyelids. She felt powerless, her certainty eroding under the conductor's skepticism. What if no one believed her? What if the killer slipped away, vanishing into the night as easily as the other train had? By the time the train pulled into Brackhampton, Elspeth's resolve had hardened. She'd disembarked, her bags heavier now with the weight of what she'd witnessed. The station was a flurry of steam and hurried footsteps, the platform slick with evening frost. She found the station-master's office, a cramped room lit by a single bulb, where a portly man in a vestcoat was sorting papers. "I need to speak to someone about a crime," Elspeth said, her voice steady, despite the knot in her chest. "I saw a woman being murdered on a train from London not an hour ago." The station-master looked up, his spectacles glinting. "Murdered, you say? That's quite a story. You'd best speak to Constable Hargreaves. He's at the police station, just across the square." Elspeth thanked him and braved the cold, her breath clouding as she crossed the cobblestone square to the small police station. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of ink and tobacco. Constable Hargreaves, a ruddy-faced man with a drooping mustache, listened as she recounted the scene. His pencil scratched notes, but his expression was one of polite boredom. "No body's been reported, Mrs. McGillicuddy, and no one else on your train saw anything, you say. It's possible you misread the situation. A lover's spat, perhaps, or a bit of roughhousing." Elspeth's cheeks flushed. "It was no spat. The woman was dead, I tell you. Her body went limp. Her eyes—" She trailed off, the memory too raw. "You must check the other train. It was going the same way as mine, at least for a while." Hargreaves sighed, jotting another note. "We'll send a message to the next stations along the line, but without a body or a witness, there's little we can do. Trains are tricky things. People come and go, and evidence doesn't stick around." Elspeth left the station feeling dismissed, her indignation warring with exhaustion. The last train to St. Mary Mead was due soon, and she had no choice but to continue her journey. As she boarded, she resolved to tell Jane Marple. Jane, with her knack for seeing through lies and her quiet, razor-sharp mind, would know what to do. The train to St. Mary Mead was quieter, its carriage nearly empty. Elspeth sat alone, her thoughts churning. She pictured the woman's scarf, the red flash of it against the stark light. Had she known her attacker? Was it a crime of passion, or something colder, more calculated? The questions gnawed at her, each one a splinter under her skin. When she arrived at St. Mary Mead, the village was hushed, its cottages glowing softly under a dusting of snow. Jane Marple's cottage stood at the edge of the high street, its garden neat despite the winter. Elspeth knocked, and the door opened to reveal Miss Marple, her white hair pulled into a tidy bun, her eyes bright behind delicate spectacles. "Elspeth, my dear!" Miss Marple's voice was warm, but her gaze sharpened as she took in her friend's pale face. "You look as if you've seen a ghost. Come in. Let's have tea." They settled in the parlor, where a fire crackled and a tray of scones awaited. Elspeth recounted the story, her words tumbling out, the parallel train, the curtain, the man's hands, the woman's struggle. Miss Marple listened, her knitting needles clicking softly, her expression unreadable but attentive. "It was no mistake, Jane," Elspeth finished, her tea untouched. "I saw a murder. The police think I'm a foolish old woman, but I know what I saw." Miss Marple set her knitting aside, her eyes narrowing. "You're not foolish, Elspeth. Your eyes are as sharp as ever. A murder on a train. It's bold, but not impossible. The killer must have known the train's paths, the moment of alignment. And the body, where is it now? Thrown from the train, perhaps, or hidden in a compartment?" Elspeth shivered, the fire's warmth no match for the chill of the memory. "What can we do? The police won't act without evidence." Miss Marple's lips curved into a faint, determined smile. "Then we shall find the evidence, my dear. I've a friend, Lucy Eyelesbarrow, who might help. She's clever, resourceful, and not afraid of a challenge. If the body is near the railway line, as I suspect, we'll need someone on the ground to look." Elspeth felt a spark of hope, the first since the horror on the train. "You believe me, then?" "Of course I do," Miss Marple said, her voice firm. "Evil has a way of showing itself, even in a fleeting moment. We'll start with the railway line near Rutherford Hall. It's the only estate close enough to where the trains parted. Lucy will find work there, and we'll see what secrets the Krakentorps are hiding." As the fire popped and the clock ticked toward midnight, Elspeth felt the weight of the day lift, replaced by a steely resolve. The woman on the train deserved justice, and with Jane Marple's mind on the case, the killer's days of freedom were numbered. The terror of the 4:50 from Paddington had set a mystery in motion, and Elspeth knew she'd see it through.
Chapter 2. The Doubting Constables. The morning after Elspeth McGillicuddy's harrowing train journey, St. Mary Mead lay under a blanket of frost, its cottages glistening like sugared confections in the pale December light.
Inside Jane Marple's cozy parlor, the air was warm with the scent of brewing tea and the faint crackle of logs in the fireplace. Elspeth sat on a chintz-covered chair, her hands clasped tightly around a steaming cup, her face still etched with the strain of what she'd witnessed on the 4:50 from Paddington. Miss Marple, perched opposite, was a picture of calm, her knitting needles clicking rhythmically as she listened to Elspeth's recounting of her fruitless encounter with the Brockhampton police. "They treated me like a dotty old spinster," Elspeth said, her Scottish burr sharpened by indignation. "Constable Hargraves scribbled my story as if it were a fairy tale, and the station master practically patted my head. I saw a woman murdered, Jane, and they're doing nothing." Miss Marple's eyes, bright and bird-like behind her spectacles, flickered with understanding. "People often underestimate women like us, Elspeth. It's a mistake, but one we can use. Tell me again about the train, the moment, the light, everything." Elspeth set her cup down, her fingers trembling slightly. "It was so quick, Jane. The other train came alongside, and the compartment was lit up, bright as a stage. The man was tall, his shoulders broad, and his hands—" She shuddered. "They were around her throat, squeezing. Her scarf, red, I think, fell loose as she went limp. Then the curtain closed, and the train was gone." Miss Marple nodded, her needles pausing. "A red scarf, that's something. And the trains parted soon after, you say? Near the Rutherford Hall estate, perhaps?" Elspeth frowned, picturing the blurred countryside. "I suppose so. There was a big house in the distance, with chimneys and a sprawl of land. The trains veered apart just after." "Rutherford Hall," Miss Marple murmured, her mind already turning. "The Crackenthorpe family lives there. Old money, old secrets. If the body was thrown from the train, it's likely somewhere on their land. The police won't act without evidence, so we must find it ourselves." Elspeth's eyes widened. "Ourselves? Jean, I'm no detective. And the police—" "Are busy with their own concerns," Miss Marple interrupted gently. "But I know someone who can help. Lucy Eyelesbarrow, sharp as a tack and fearless. She's a housekeeper by trade, but her real talent is seeing what others miss. If we can get her into Rutherford Hall, she'll find what the police won't." Elspeth leaned forward, hope flickering. "You think she'd take it on? A murder case?" Miss Marple's lips curved into a faint smile. "Lucy thrives on challenges. Let's pay her a visit." By mid-morning, the two women were bundled in coats and scarves, trudging through St. Mary Mead's frosty lanes to a tidy cottage on the village edge. Lucy Eyelesbarrow's home was a contrast to Miss Marple's, modern with crisp white curtains and a garden that even in winter hinted at meticulous care. Lucy herself answered the door, a woman in her early 30s, with auburn hair tied loosely back and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. She wore a wool sweater and trousers, a far cry from the traditional housekeeper's garb, and her handshake was firm. "Miss Marple, and you must be Mrs. McGillicuddy," Lucy said, ushering them into a bright sitting room. "What brings you out in this chill?" "Trouble, I'm afraid," Miss Marple said, settling into a chair. "Elspeth, tell her what you saw." Elspeth recounted the murder once more, her voice steadier now, but no less urgent. Lucy listened, her expression shifting from curiosity to grim focus. When Elspeth finished, Lucy leaned back, tapping a pencil against her chin. "That's no small thing," Lucy said. "A murder on a moving train, seen by chance? The police won't like it. No body, no witness but you. They'll call it a hallucination and file it away." "Exactly," Elspeth exclaimed. "But I know what I saw. That woman's dead, and her killer's walking free." Lucy's eyes met Miss Marple's, a silent understanding passing between them. "You want me to poke around, don't you?" Lucy said. "Wherever this train was when it happened." Miss Marple nodded. "The Rutherford Hall estate is our best bet. The trains parted near there, and the Crackenthorpes are complicated. Luther Crackenthorpe, the patriarch, is a miser with a sharp tongue. His children, Emma, Cedric, Harold, and Alfred, have their own ambitions, and there's a grandson, Alexander, who's sharp for his age. If there's evidence on their land, you're the one to find it." Lucy grinned, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "A dysfunctional family and a possible corpse. Sounds like my kind of job. But they won't just hire a stranger out of the blue." "They will if you're the best," Miss Marple said. "You have a reputation, Lucy. I'll make inquiries through my nephew Raymond. He knows the Crackenthorpe solicitor. A word about your skills, and they'll be begging for you." Elspeth looked between them, marveling at the calm efficiency. "You're sure this will work? What if the killer's still out there, watching?" "Then we'll be careful," Lucy said, her tone firm but kind. "I'll keep my eyes open, and Miss Marple will guide us. We'll find your murdered woman, Mrs. McGillicuddy." By afternoon, Miss Marple had made her calls, and Lucy was on her way to Brockhampton to meet with the Crackenthorpe solicitor, Mr. Wimborne. The solicitor's office was a stuffy affair, all dark wood and leather-bound books, with a faint smell of wax polish. Mr. Wimborne, a thin man with a perpetually furrowed brow, peered at Lucy over his spectacles. "Miss Eyelesbarrow, your credentials are impeccable," he said, glancing at a letter from Raymond West. "Rutherford Hall needs a housekeeper, and the family is particular. Mr. Crackenthorpe is frugal, to put it mildly, and his children are not always in harmony. Can you manage such a household?"
Lucy smiled, exuding confidence. "I've handled worse. I'll keep the place running smoothly and stay out of family squabbles. When can I start?" Wimborne hesitated, then nodded. "Tomorrow, if you're able. The train fare will be covered. You'll report to Miss Emma Crackenthorpe. She manages the house, more or less." As Lucy left the office, she felt a thrill of anticipation. This wasn't just a housekeeping job, it was a hunt. She spent the evening packing, her mind already mapping the estate. If a body had been thrown from the train, it might be hidden in the dense woods or overgrown fields near Rutherford Hall. She'd need to explore discreetly, without arousing suspicion. Meanwhile, Elspeth returned to Brockhampton's police station, determined to press her case. The station was busier now, with officers bustling about and a telephone ringing incessantly. Constable Hargreaves was at his desk, sorting through a stack of reports. He looked up, his expression weary. "Mrs. McGillicuddy, back again," he said, not unkindly. "We've sent word to the stations along the line, as promised. No reports of a body or a missing woman matching your description." Elspeth's jaw tightened. "Then you're not looking hard enough. That woman was strangled and her body's out there somewhere. Have you checked the railway embankments, the fields near Rutherford Hall?" Hargreaves sighed, rubbing his temples. "We've got men patrolling the main lines, but there's miles of track, madam, and no other passengers reported anything unusual. Without more to go on, a name, a face, something solid, we can't justify a full search." Elspeth leaned forward, her voice low and fierce. "I'm not imagining this, Constable. I saw a woman die. If you won't act, I'll find someone who will." Hargreaves raised an eyebrow but made no reply, jotting a note as she left. Outside, Elspeth's breath clouded in the cold air, her frustration boiling. She felt a pang of guilt for dragging Jane into this, but she trusted her friend's instincts. If anyone could unravel this mystery, it was Miss Marple. That evening, back at the cottage, Miss Marple sat by her fire, a railway map spread across her lap. She traced the route of the 450 from Paddington, her finger pausing at the point where the tracks diverged near Rutherford Hall. The estate's sprawling grounds, woods, fields, and a crumbling boathouse offered countless hiding places for a body. She closed her eyes, picturing the scene Elspeth had described. The bright light, the red scarf, the man's hands. It was a bold crime, committed in plain sight, yet hidden by the train's fleeting passage. A knock at the door broke her reverie. It was Florence, her young maid, with a telegram from Lucy. Miss Marple opened it, her lips pursing as she read. Hired at Rutherford Hall. Start tomorrow. Will scout grounds. L.E. Miss Marple folded the telegram, her mind whirring. Lucy's presence at Rutherford Hall would be their eyes and ears, but the Krakenthorpes were a prickly lot. Luther, the patriarch, was notorious for his penny-pinching and sharp temper. Emma, his daughter, was kind but overburdened, while the brothers, Cedric, Harold, and Alfred, each had their own agendas. And then there was Brian Eastley, the widower of their late sister Edith, and his son Alexander, who might notice more than the adults realized. She turned to Elspeth, who was knitting nervously by the fire. "Lucy's in," Miss Marple said. "She'll be at Rutherford Hall by morning. If there's evidence, a scarf, a body, anything, she'll find it." Elspeth's shoulders relaxed slightly. "And if she doesn't, what if the killer's long gone?" "Then we'll find another way," Miss Marple said, her voice calm but steely. "A murder like that leaves ripples. Someone knows something, whether it's a Krakenthorpe or a stranger. We'll follow the ripples until we find the truth." Elspeth managed a small smile, comforted by her friend's certainty. The fire cast long shadows across the room, and outside the wind whispered through St. Mary Mead's quiet lanes. The murder on the 450 from Paddington was no longer just Elspeth's burden. It was a puzzle, and Miss Marple was already fitting the pieces together. As Lucy prepared to step into Rutherford Hall, the hunt for the killer had begun.
Chapter 3. The Gates of Rutherford Hall. The morning sun struggled through a veil of gray clouds as Lucy Eyelesbarrow stepped off the Brackhampton train, her suitcase light, but her mind heavy with purpose. Rutherford Hall loomed in the distance, its chimneys piercing the mist like sentinels over the sprawling estate. The air carried the sharp bite of December, and the crunch of gravel under Lucy's boots was the only sound on the lonely road leading to the manor. She adjusted her scarf, her auburn hair catching the faint light, and steeled herself for the task ahead. She wasn't just a housekeeper. She was Miss Marple's eyes and ears, hunting for clues to a murder no one else believed had happened. The gates of Rutherford Hall were wrought iron, rusted in places, flanked by stone pillars topped with weathered griffins. Lucy pushed them open, wincing at their groan, and followed the winding drive through overgrown lawns and skeletal trees. The house itself was a hulking relic of Victorian grandeur, its red brick faded, its windows staring blankly. She knocked, and the door creaked open to reveal Emma Krakenthorpe, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a polite, strained smile. "Miss Eyelesbarrow?" Emma's voice was soft but carried an edge of exhaustion. "Mr. Wimborne spoke highly of you. Come in, please. We're in a bit of a state, I'm afraid." Lucy stepped into a cavernous hall, its parquet floor scuffed and its chandelier draped in cobwebs. The air smelled of old wood and wax, with a faint undercurrent of damp. "I'm used to a challenge," Lucy said, her tone warm but professional. "I'll have the place in order in no time." Emma led her to a drawing room where a fire sputtered in a massive hearth. The room was cluttered with mismatched furniture, velvet chairs fraying at the seams, a mahogany table scarred with rings. "Father's particular about expenses," Emma explained, gesturing vaguely. "He doesn't like unnecessary changes. You'll meet him soon, but, well, he's not always easy." Lucy nodded, her sharp eyes already scanning the room. A photograph on the mantel caught her attention, a family portrait, stiff and formal, showing an elderly man with a scowl, Luther Krakenthorpe no doubt, flanked by Emma and 3 men who must be her brothers. A younger man and a boy stood slightly apart, their expressions guarded. "That's the family," Emma said, following Lucy's gaze. "My brothers, Cedric,
Harold and Alfred, and Brian Eastley, my late sister Edith's husband, with his son Alexander. They're all here for Christmas, which makes things lively." Before Lucy could reply, a door slammed upstairs, followed by a bellowing voice. "Emma, where's my blasted tea?" Footsteps thudded, and Luther Crackenthorpe appeared, a wiry man with a shock of white hair and eyes like flint. He wore a threadbare suit, his collar askew, and his glare fixed on Lucy. "Who's this?" he demanded, waving a gnarled hand. "Another expense I didn't approve?" "This is Miss Eyelesbarrow, father," Emma said, her voice calm but weary. "The new housekeeper. Mr. Wimborne hired her." Luther snorted, eyeing Lucy as if she were a dubious investment. "Don't waste my coal, girl, and don't touch my study. I'll know if you do." He turned to Emma. "And tell Cedric to stop cluttering the hall with his paints. This isn't a blasted art gallery." As Luther stomped out, Lucy exchanged a glance with Emma, who sighed. "He's protective of his routines. Let me show you your duties." The morning passed in a whirlwind of tasks, dusting neglected corners, organizing a chaotic pantry, and learning the house's labyrinthine layout. But Lucy's real work began when Emma left her to unpack in the servants' quarters. Slipping on a plain coat, she ventured outside, her breath clouding in the chill. The railway line ran parallel to the estate's western boundary, a ribbon of steel glinting through the bare trees. If Elspeth McGillicuddy's story was true, the murdered woman's body might lie somewhere along that embankment. Lucy followed a muddy path toward the tracks, her eyes scanning the ground. The embankment was steep, littered with brambles and discarded railway ties. She moved carefully, her boots sinking into the frost-crusted earth. Near a cluster of gnarled oaks, something caught her eye, a scrap of fabric caught on a thorn. It was coarse, gray, and torn, with a faint stain that might be mud or something darker. Lucy's pulse quickened. She tucked the fabric into her pocket, marking the spot in her mind. It wasn't a red scarf, but it was a start.
Back at the house, Lucy met the rest of the Crackenthorpes over a tense luncheon in the dining room, a cavernous space with peeling wallpaper and a table too large for the 6 people seated around it. Cedric, the eldest son, was a lanky man with paint-stained fingers and a sardonic grin. "So, you're the miracle worker who'll tame this mausoleum," he said, spearing a potato. "Good luck. Father's tighter than a drum, and this place is falling apart." Harold, the middle brother, was polished and aloof, his city suit out of place among the room's decay. "Don't mind Cedric," he said, his voice clipped. "He's allergic to responsibility. Miss Eyelesbarrow, I trust she'll keep things discreet. We value our privacy." "Of course," Lucy said, her smile neutral. She noted Harold's guarded tone, as if he feared she'd pry into more than dust bunnies. Alfred, the youngest brother, was wiry and restless, his eyes darting like a fox's. "Privacy's overrated," he said, smirking. "This house has too many secrets already. Ever hear of ghosts, Miss Eyelesbarrow? This place is crawling with them." Emma shot him a warning look. "That's enough, Alfred. Don't scare her off on her first day." Brian Eastley, slouched at the table's end, said little, his face weathered but handsome, his RAF tie loosened. His son, Alexander, a boy of about 12, with sharp eyes and a mop of dark hair, watched Lucy intently. "Do you like trains?" he asked suddenly. "The line runs right by our land. I see them at night sometimes, all lit up." Lucy's interest piqued, but she kept her tone light. "I do. Ever notice anything odd out there, Alexander?" The boy shrugged, glancing at his father. "Just rabbits and foxes, but the embankment's spooky after dark." The conversation shifted to mundane matters, Christmas plans, the weather, but Lucy felt the undercurrents. The Crackenthorpes were a family bound by blood, but fractured by mistrust. Luther's obsession with money, Emma's quiet strain, the brothers' rivalries, Brian's detachment, and Alexander's curiosity all hinted at deeper tensions. If the murdered woman was connected to this household, the clues lay in their silences. That afternoon, Lucy tackled the library, a dim room lined with moldering books and heavy curtains. As she dusted, she noticed a locked drawer in Luther's desk, its keyhole scratched as if someone had tried to force it. She filed the detail away, her mind returning to the fabric in her pocket. Was it from the victim's clothing? Or something else? A worker's rag, perhaps? She needed more to go on. As dusk fell, Lucy slipped out again, this time to the estate's northern edge, where a crumbling stone wall marked the boundary. The railway was closer here, its tracks breaming faintly under the rising moon. She moved quietly, her flashlight's beam cutting through the shadows. Near a ditch, she spotted a glint, a broken watch, its face cracked, its hands frozen at 4:47. Her heart raced. The time was too close to Elspeth's sighting to be coincidence. She wrapped the watch in her handkerchief, careful not to smudge it, and hurried back to the house. In her small room, Lucy wrote a coded note to Miss Marple, using the cipher they'd agreed on, a simple substitution to avoid prying eyes. Found fabric and watch near tracks, possible clues. Family tints, secrets abound, will explore further, L.E. She'd send it via the village post tomorrow, trusting Miss Marple to interpret the findings. Dinner was a quieter affair, with Luther absent and the brothers bickering over a proposed sale of estate land. Emma excused herself early, citing a headache, and Brian and Alexander retired soon after. Alone in the kitchen, Lucy overheard a hushed argument between Cedric and Alfred in the hall. "You're a fool if you think Father will agree," Cedric hissed. "He'd rather burn the place down than sell an inch." Alfred's voice was sharp. "We need the money, Cedric. Or do you plan to live like a pauper forever?" Lucy busied herself with dishes, her ears straining. Money, land, secrets. The Krakenthorpes were a powder keg, and the murder might be the spark. She thought of the watch, its cracked face a silent witness to violence. Was it the victims or the killers? And why leave it behind? As she climbed the creaking stairs to her room, Lucy felt the weight of Rutherford Hall's secrets pressing in. The fabric and watch were tangible, proof that Elspeth's vision wasn't a fantasy. Tomorrow, she'd search the woods where the embankment dipped into shadow. If a body was out there, she'd find it. For now, she locked her door, the click echoing in the silent house. The gates of Rutherford Hall had opened to her, but they guarded a maze of lies, and Lucy was determined to navigate it.
Chapter 4. Shadows in the Barn. Lucy Eyelesbarrow woke to the sound of rain drumming against the small window of her room at Rutherford Hall. The gray light of dawn barely penetrated the gloom, casting the servants' quarters in a muted wash of shadow. She lay still for a moment, her mind sifting through the clues she'd uncovered. The torn fabric near the railway embankment, the broken watch frozen at 4:47, and the undercurrents of tension rippling through the Krakenthorpe family. Each fragment was a piece of the puzzle Elspeth McGillicuddy had set before her, a murder glimpsed on a train, dismissed by the police, but undeniable to Lucy. Today, she would push deeper, seeking the truth hidden in the estate's sprawling grounds. She dressed quickly in a practical skirt and sweater, tucking her auburn hair under a scarf to ward off the damp. Her first task was the morning's housekeeping, polishing silver in the dining room and preparing breakfast. But her real work lay outside, where the railway tracks skirted the estate's edge. The fabric and watch suggested the murdered woman's body was nearby, perhaps concealed in a place the Krakenthorpes avoided. As she descended the creaking stairs, the house felt alive with secrets, its walls whispering of things left unsaid. In the kitchen, Lucy found Emma Krakenthorpe already up, stirring a pot of porridge with a weary precision. The older woman's face was pale, her eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. "You're an early riser, Miss Eyelesbarrow," Emma said, managing a faint smile. "Father will be pleased. He hates tardiness." "I like to get a head start," Lucy replied, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "This place is beautiful, but it's a lot to manage. Do you ever walk the grounds, the woods, perhaps, or the old buildings?" Emma's spoon paused, her expression tightening. "Not often. The woods are overgrown, and the outbuildings, well, Father keeps them locked. He doesn't like anyone poking about. Lucy nodded, filing away Emma's unease. Fair enough, I'll stick to the house for now. But her mind was already on those outbuildings, barns, sheds, perhaps a forgotten stable. If a body had been hidden, they were prime candidates. Breakfast was a strained affair, with Luther Crackenthorpe presiding over the table like a disgruntled monarch. Cedric, the eldest son, slouched in his chair, sketching idly on a napkin, while Harold, the polished banker, read a financial paper with a frown. Alfred, the youngest, fidgeted, his eyes darting to the window where rain streaked the glass. Brian Eastley and his son Alexander were absent, likely sleeping in, and Lucy noted the empty chairs with interest. The family's dynamic was a tangle of resentment and unspoken grudges, each member a potential suspect or victim. "Rain's ruining the fields," Luther grumbled, stabbing at his porridge. "If Cedric had his way, we'd sell them off to some developer. Over my dead body." Cedric smirked, not looking up from his sketch. "Careful, Father. You keep talking like that, someone might take it literally." Emma's spoon clattered against her bowl. "Cedric, please, can we have one meal without arguing?" Lucy kept her expression neutral, serving tea with practiced ease. But she caught Alfred's fleeting glance at Cedric, a mix of amusement and something darker. The family's discord was a thread she'd need to pull carefully. But first, she had a barn to investigate. After breakfast, Lucy slipped into a raincoat and boots, claiming she needed to check the coal shed for leaks. The rain had softened to a drizzle, leaving the estate's grounds slick and muddy. She followed an overgrown path past the formal gardens where rose bushes sagged under the wet and toward a cluster of outbuildings huddled at the estate's northern edge. The largest was a barn, its red paint peeling, its double doors secured with a heavy padlock. The lock was new, its metal gleaming against the weathered wood, and Lucy's pulse quickened. Why lock an old barn so securely? She circled the structure, her boots sinking into the mud. The barn's windows were boarded, but one board hung loose, revealing a sliver of darkness inside. She glanced around. No one was near, and pried the board aside, wincing at the creak. Peering inside, she saw stacks of crates, old farm tools, and a tarp-covered shape in the corner. The air smelled of mildew and something sharper, almost metallic. She squeezed through the gap, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The tarp was heavy, coated in dust, and as she lifted it, her breath caught. Beneath it lay a pile of straw, streaked with dark stains that looked suspiciously like blood. Her fingers brushed the floor, finding it sticky, and she recoiled, her heart pounding. Kneeling, she spotted something caught in the straw, a woman's glove, leather, with a delicate embroidered rose. It was worn, but elegant, out of place in this decaying barn. Lucy tucked it into her pocket, her mind racing. Blood and a glove, evidence of violence, perhaps the murder itself. She replaced the tarp and slipped out, securing the board as best she could. The rain had picked up, masking her footsteps as she hurried back to the house. In her room, she examined the glove, noting its fine stitching and faint perfume, a floral scent that lingered despite the damp. It wasn't the red scarf Elspeth had described, but it was another link to the woman on the train. Lucy wrote a second coded note to Miss Marple. Barn holds bloodstains, woman's glove, locked tight, family evasive. Will dig deeper, L.E. That afternoon, Lucy tackled the upstairs rooms, her housekeeping duties a cover for her real work. In Emma's bedroom, she found a stack of letters tied with ribbon, their edges yellowed but unopened. One envelope bore a London postmark and a name, Anna Stravinska. Lucy's pulse quickened. Was this the murdered woman? She didn't dare open the letter, but she memorized the name, planning to pass it to Miss Marple. At tea, she met Brian Eastley and Alexander, who had returned from a trip to the village. Brian was quiet, his eyes shadowed, but Alexander was a whirlwind of energy, peppering Lucy with questions about her work. "You ever clean the barn?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "You ever clean the barn? My grandfather says it's off limits, but I saw someone out there last week, late at night." "You ever clean the barn? You ever clean the barn? My grandfather says it's off limits, but I saw someone out there last week, late at night."
Alexander shrugged, biting into a scone. Couldn't tell, just a shadow, moving fast, probably a poacher. Brian glanced at his son, his voice low. "Don't go spinning tales, Alex. The barn's just storage, nothing to see." But Lucy caught the tension in Brian's posture, the way his fingers tightened around his cup. Someone had been in the barn, and the family, or at least some of them, knew more than they let on. She changed the subject, asking about the estate's history, but her mind was on the glove and the blood. The barn was a crime scene, she was sure of it, but she needed more to connect it to the train. That evening, as the rain eased, Lucy overheard heated exchange outside the library. Harold and Alfred stood in the corridor, their voices low but fierce. "You're playing a dangerous game," Harold said, his tone icy. "If Father finds out, you'll be cut off without a penny." Alfred laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "And you're so pure, Harold? We all have our secrets. Keep yours, and I'll keep mine." Lucy slipped away before they noticed her, her mind churning. The Crackenthorpes were hiding something, perhaps many things. Was the murder tied to their financial woes, or was it personal? The glove suggested a woman of refinement, not a transient or a stranger. Anna Stravinska's name echoed in her thoughts, a clue she couldn't ignore. Before bed, Lucy ventured to the attic, a dusty warren of trunks and forgotten furniture. She hoped to find more traces of the mysterious Anna, but the attic was a maze of relics, old clothes, broken chairs, and a cracked mirror that reflected her flashlight's beam like a ghostly eye. Tucked behind a trunk, she found a faded theater program from a London show dated 2 weeks earlier. The lead performer? Anna Stravinska, dancer. Lucy's breath caught. It wasn't proof, but it was a connection. A woman who might have crossed paths with the Crackenthorpes and who might now be dead. She returned to her room, the program and glove hidden in her suitcase. The barn's bloodstains haunted her, a stark reminder that the killer was close, perhaps within these very walls. She locked her door, the click a small defiance against the house's secrets. Tomorrow she'd explore the woods beyond the barn, where the railway dipped into shadow. The glove, the blood, the program, they were pieces of a puzzle, and Lucy was determined to fit them together.
Chapter 5. A Family's Fractured Bonds. The rain had ceased, leaving Rutherford Hall's grounds sodden and glistening under a weak December sun. Lucy Eyelesbarrow stood at the kitchen window, washing dishes with mechanical precision, her mind far from the soapy water. The clues she'd uncovered, the torn fabric, the broken watch, the blood-stained straw in the barn, and the embroidered glove, painted a chilling picture. The theater program featuring Anna Stravinska, found in the attic, suggested a connection to the murdered woman Elspeth McGillicuddy had seen on the 450 from Paddington. But the Crackenthorpe family, with their guarded glances and sharp words, held the key to the mystery, and Lucy was determined to unlock their secrets. The morning was brisk, the house stirring with the clatter of breakfast preparations. Lucy moved through her duties, setting the table, stoking the fire, but her eyes were on the family. Luther Crackenthorpe, the patriarch, shuffled into the dining room, his cane tapping a rhythm of irritation. Emma, his daughter, followed, her face drawn as she poured tea. The brothers, Cedric, Harold, and Alfred, arrived in turn, each carrying an air of discontent. Brian Eastley and his son Alexander were late, their absence noted by Luther's scowl. Lazy lot, those two, Luther muttered, stabbing a piece of toast. Living off my charity, and not a shred of gratitude. Emma's lips tightened, but she said nothing, her hand steady as she passed the butter. Lucy, serving kippers, caught Cedric's eye roll and Harold's stiff silence. Alfred, however, leaned back with a sly grin. Charity, father. You clutch every penny like it's your last breath. Maybe Brian's just tired of begging. Luther's cane slammed against the table, rattling the china. Mind your tongue, boy. This house is mine, and you'll all dance to my tune or find yourselves out in the cold. The air crackled with tension, and Lucy slipped back to the kitchen, her ears tuned to the argument. The Crackenthorpes were a family at war, their bonds frayed by greed and resentment. She suspected the murder was tied to their struggles, perhaps over Luther's fortune, which hung over them like a storm cloud. The will, mentioned in passing by Emma, was a shadowy presence, its details locked in Luther's study. After breakfast, Lucy tackled the upstairs linen closet, a pretext to explore the family's private quarters. In Harold's room, she found a locked briefcase under the bed, its leather scuffed but expensive. She didn't dare tamper with it, but its presence suggested secrets, financial dealings, perhaps, or something more sinister. In Cedric's room, a cluttered mess of canvases and paint tubes, she spotted a sketchbook open to a drawing of the railway embankment, its lines jagged and ominous. Was it artistic fancy, or had Cedric seen something near the tracks? Her search was interrupted by Alexander, who appeared at the door, his schoolboy cap askew. "You're not like other housekeepers. You're always looking at things. Are you a detective?" Lucy laughed, folding a sheet with practiced ease. "Just thorough. This house has a lot of corners to keep clean. You know it well, don't you? Ever find anything odd in your wanderings?" Alexander hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "There's a path in the woods near the barn. I saw footprints there a few days ago. Big ones, not mine. I told Dad, but he said it was probably a gamekeeper." Lucy's pulse quickened, but she kept her tone casual. "Footprints, huh? Could be worth a look. Show me sometime." The boy grinned, nodding, and scampered off. Lucy made a mental note to check the woods later. Footprints near the barn could belong to the killer or someone hiding evidence. She finished her tasks and slipped downstairs, where Emma was sorting mail in the hall. A letter slipped from the pile, its envelope unmarked but sealed with red wax. She glimpsed a single line of handwriting before Emma snatched it up. "Meet me at the boathouse, midnight." "Family correspondence?" Lucy asked, her voice light. Emma flushed, tucking the letter into her apron. "Just personal matters. Nothing for you to worry about, Miss Eyelesbarrow." But Lucy was worried. The letter suggested a secret rendezvous, and the boathouse, half ruined by the lake, was another potential hiding place. She resolved to investigate that night, under cover of darkness. For now, she returned to the kitchen, where Brian Eastley sat alone, nursing a cup of coffee. His RAF tie was loose, his face etched with fatigue. "You're settling in well," he said, his voice low. "This place can be a lot. The family, they're not easy." Lucy smiled, peeling potatoes. "I've seen worse. You and Alexander seem to keep to yourselves. Not fond of the family squabbles?" Brian's laugh was bitter. "Edith, my wife, was the only one who held this lot together. Since she died, it's been every man for himself. Luther's will is the noose around their necks. He dangles it like a carrot, but no one knows who gets what." Lucy's knife paused. "A will can make people do strange things. Ever hear of Anna Stravinska? I found a theater program with her name." Brian's cup froze halfway to his lips, his eyes narrowing. "Anna? She was a dancer, wasn't she? Came to a party here last month before Christmas. Charmed everyone, especially Alfred." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Lucy said, her heart racing. Brian's reaction confirmed Anna's connection to the Krakenthorpes. Had she been the woman on the train? And why had Alfred been charmed? That afternoon, Lucy ventured to the estate's lake, a murky expanse bordered by reeds and a dilapidated boathouse. The structure leaned precariously, its roof sagging, its door ajar. Inside, the air was damp, smelling of rot and algae. She searched carefully, avoiding the creaking floorboards, and found a cigarette case tucked behind a beam. Its silver surface engraved with the initials A.S. Her breath caught. Anna Stravinska, perhaps. The case was empty, but its presence in the boathouse suggested a meeting gone wrong.
As she pocketed the case, she heard footsteps outside. She ducked behind a stack of crates, her heart pounding. Harold's voice carried through the thin walls, low and urgent. "You're pushing too hard, Alfred. If this gets out, we're all ruined." Alfred's reply was sharp, "And if we do nothing, we lose everything. You saw her letter. She knew too much." Lucy held her breath, the cigarette case heavy in her pocket. Who was she? Anna? The voices faded, and Lucy slipped out, her mind buzzing. The brothers were hiding something, and the letter Emma had concealed might hold the key. Back at the house, Lucy found Alexander in the library, poring over a railway timetable. "Planning a trip?" she asked, keeping her tone playful. He grinned, closing the book. "Just like trains. Did you know the 450 from Paddington passes right by our land? I watch it sometimes from the hill. Last week I saw something weird, a bundle thrown from a carriage near the Oaks." Lucy's heart skipped. A bundle? Could it have been a person? Alexander shrugged, but his eyes were serious. "Maybe. It was dark. I told Dad, but he said I imagined it." Lucy made a mental note to check the Oaks near the tracks. Alexander's story aligned with Elspeth's, suggesting the body had indeed been disposed of near Rutherford Hall. She spent the rest of the day cleaning, her mind on the cigarette case and the letter. At dinner, the family was subdued, Luther complaining about the cost of coal, while Emma avoided Lucy's gaze. Cedric sketched, Harold read, and Alfred tapped his fork nervously. Brian and Alexander ate quickly and left, leaving Lucy to clear the table. That night, under a sky pricked with stars, Lucy crept to the boathouse, her flashlight dimmed to avoid detection. The letter had mentioned midnight, and though it was risky, she needed answers. She hid in the reeds, the cold seeping through her coat. At 11:55, a figure approached, Emma, her face pale in the moonlight, clutching a shawl. She entered the boathouse, and moments later another figure joined her, Dr. Quimper, the family physician, his broad frame unmistakable. Lucy strained to hear their whispered conversation. "You shouldn't have kept it," Quimper said, his voice low. "If Luther finds out, he'll disinherit you." "It's not that simple," Emma replied, her tone desperate. "She was here, John. She knew about the will." Lucy's heart raced. The she again. Anna? The conversation ended abruptly, and Quimper left, his footsteps fading. Emma lingered, sobbing softly, before returning to the house. Lucy waited, then slipped back to her room, her mind awhirl. The cigarette case, the letter, the boathouse meeting, all pointed to his secret tied to Luther's will and Anna Stravinska. She wrote a third coded note to Miss Marple. Found cigarette case, A.S. initials. Overheard Emma and Quimper at boathouse, mention of a woman and the will. Alexander saw bundle thrown from the train. Checking Oaks tomorrow. L.E. The note would go out with the Morning Post, but Lucy felt the weight of the mystery pressing in. The Krakenthorpes were a family fractured by greed and fear, and Anna's death was the fracture's epicenter. Tomorrow, she'd search the Oaks, hoping to find the body, or whatever was left of it. For now, she locked her door, the cigarette case hidden in her suitcase, its silver glinting like a warning in the dark.
Chapter 6. The Doctor's Deceptions. The dawn broke over Rutherford Hall with a fragile clarity, the December skies streaked with pale gold as Lucy Eyelesbarrow slipped from her room, her breath visible in the chill. The house was silent, its inhabitants still cocooned in sleep. But Lucy's mind was ablaze with the clues she'd gathered. The torn fabric, the broken watch, the blood-stained straw in the barn, the embroidered glove, the cigarette case inscribed with A.S., and the cryptic conversation between Emma Crackenthorpe and Dr. Quimper at the boathouse. Each piece pointed to Anna Stravinska, the dancer whose name haunted the estate, and to a murder seen only by Elspeth McGillicuddy on the 450 from Paddington. Today, Lucy would probe deeper, and the arrival of Miss Jane Marple promised a sharpening of the hunt. Lucy's morning tasks were light, preparing tea and toast for the Crackenthorpes, but her thoughts were on Dr. Quimper, the family physician whose late-night meeting with Emma suggested secrets beyond his medical duties. His charm was a polished veneer, but Lucy sensed a calculating edge beneath it. She needed to observe him closely, and this Jane Marple's visit would provide the perfect cover. At breakfast, the dining room was a tableau of strained civility. Luther Crackenthorpe, hunched over his plate, muttered about the cost of firewood, his eyes darting suspiciously at his children. Emma served quietly, her face pale, while Cedric sketched on a napkin, his strokes sharp with irritation. Harold read a letter, his lips pursed, and Alfred toyed with his fork, his restless energy palpable. Brian Eastley and his son Alexander were absent, likely exploring the grounds, as Alexander often did. "Miss Eyelesbarrow," Luther barked, breaking Lucy's thoughts. "You're not here to daydream. The silver needs polishing, and don't touch my study." "Of course, Mr. Crackenthorpe," Lucy replied, her tone deferential, but her eyes noting his clenched fist. The patriarch's paranoia was a thread she'd tug later. As she cleared the table, Emma approached, her voice low. "A friend of mine, Miss Jane Marple, is visiting today. She's elderly, a bit frail. Could you prepare the guest room?" Lucy nodded, her heart lifting. "I'd be happy to. When does she arrive?" "She's here for a rest, but be kind to her." Lucy sensed Emma's unease, but smiled. "I'll make her comfortable." The prospect of Miss Marple's arrival was a spark in the gathering gloom. The old lady's sharp mind would cut through the family's evasions like a knife through silk. By mid-morning, Lucy had prepared the guest room, a small chamber with faded wallpaper and a view of the railway tracks. She tucked the cigarette case and glove deeper into her suitcase, wary of prying eyes, and slipped out to the kitchen garden where she could think undisturbed. The garden was a tangle of wilted herbs and frost-bitten soil, but it offered a clear view of the barn, its padlocked doors a silent challenge. Alexander's mention of a bundle thrown from the train, near the oaks, gnawed at her. She'd search there soon, but first, she needed to understand Quimper's role. At noon, Lucy met Miss Marple at the Brackhampton station, a bustling hub of steam and chatter. The elderly woman stepped off the train, her white hair tucked under a modest hat, her eyes bright despite her frail appearance. She carried a small valise and a knitting bag, her demeanor unassuming but alert. "Miss Eyelesbarrow," Miss Marple said, her voice soft but clear. "You're looking well. I trust the Crackenthorpes are keeping you busy." "Very," Lucy said, taking the valise. "The house is interesting. I've found a few things you'll want to hear about." Miss Marple's lips twitched, a hint of a smile. "Later, my dear. Let's get settled first." At Rutherford Hall, Emma greeted Miss Marple with forced warmth, ushering her to the drawing room for tea. Lucy served, her ears tuned to the conversation. Miss Marple played her part perfectly, chatting about village gossip and rheumatism, but her eyes roamed, catching the family's subtle tells. Emma's nervous hands, Cedric's distracted sketching, Harold's stiff posture. When Dr. Quimper arrived, summoned to check Luther's heart, Lucy watched him closely. He was a broad man in his 40s, with a disarming smile and a manner that oozed confidence. He greeted Miss Marple with a flourish, but his eyes lingered on Emma, a flicker of intimacy passing between them. "Miss Marple, a pleasure," Quimper said, shaking her hand. "I hear you're a friend of Emma's, come to escape the village bustle." "Something like that," Miss Marple replied, her tone mild, "though I find estates like this have their own excitements. Such history in these walls."
Quimper's smile tightened, and Lucy caught a flash of wariness. History, yes, but mostly dust and drafts. If you'll excuse me, I must see to Mr. Crackenthorpe. As he left, Miss Marple's gaze followed him, her knitting needles clicking softly. Lucy leaned close, whispering, "He's too smooth, and he's close to Emma, too close." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes never leaving her knitting. A man who knows his charm is a man to watch. Keep an eye on him, Lucy. That evening, the house prepared for dinner, a formal affair at Luther's insistence. Lucy oversaw the kitchen, her hands busy with a curry recipe she'd adapted from an old cookbook found in the pantry. The spices, turmeric, cumin, coriander, filled the air with a warm, exotic scent. But as she stirred, she noticed an odd bitterness in the mix. She tasted a pinch, frowning. It wasn't right. Something sharp, almost medicinal, lingered on her tongue. Suspicion flared, and she set the pot aside, substituting a simpler dish of roast chicken. At dinner, Luther took one bite of the chicken and scowled. "Where's the curry? I told you I wanted something with some kick, girl." "My apologies," Lucy said smoothly. "The spices were off. I didn't want to serve anything subpar." Luther grunted, but Emma's eyes widened, a flicker of alarm crossing her face. Quimper, seated beside her, patted her hand, his smile reassuring. "Wise choice, Miss Eyelesbarrow. Can't be too careful with food." Lucy's skin prickled. Had someone tampered with the curry? She excused herself to the kitchen, where she sealed the pot and hid it in a locked cupboard. Later, she'd send a sample to Miss Marple's chemist friend in London for analysis. Poison was a coward's weapon, and the timing, after her discoveries in the barn and boathouse, felt too deliberate to be coincidence. After dinner, Miss Marple retired to the guest room, and Lucy joined her, locking the door for privacy. She shared her findings, the cigarette case, the glove, Alexander's story of the bundle, and the boathouse conversation. Miss Marple listened, her knitting needles still, her eyes sharp. Anna Stravinska, a dancer, known to the family, and now a poisoned curry, perhaps meant for Luther. The killer is bold, but sloppy. That watch, the glove, they're careless mistakes. Lucy nodded, pulling out a railway map. Alexander saw the bundle near the Oaks. "Here," she pointed to a spot where the tracks curved past the estate. "I'll search tomorrow. But Quimper, he's involved, I'm sure. His closeness to Emma, his reaction to Anna's name." Miss Marple's lips pursed. "Dr. Quimper is a man who plays roles. Doctor, confidant, perhaps lover. But his motives are murky. Watch him at breakfast tomorrow. I'll ask a few questions, see what he lets slip." That morning, Lucy served breakfast under Miss Marple's watchful eye. Quimper arrived late, his coat damp from a morning ride, and joined the family at the table. Miss Marple, sipping tea, turned to him with a disarming smile. "Dr. Quimper, you must see such fascinating people in your work. Ever meet a dancer named Anna Stravinska? I hear she was quite the star." Quimper's fork paused, his smile faltering for a split second. "Anna? Vaguely. She performed in London, I believe." "Why do you ask?" "Oh, just village chatter. Someone mentioned her visiting here. Such a tragedy, performers disappearing from the stage." Quimper's jaw tightened, but he recovered quickly. "The stage is fickle. People come and go." He turned to Emma, changing the subject, but Lucy caught his unease, a crack in his polished facade. As breakfast ended, Lucy slipped out to the Oaks, a dense grove where the railway tracks dipped into a shallow ravine. The ground was soft from the rain, and she searched carefully, her eyes scanning for anything out of place. Near a gnarled tree, she found a patch of disturbed earth, as if something heavy had been dragged. Kneeling, she brushed away leaves, revealing a glint of metal, a hairpin, ornate,
with a tiny pearl. It was delicate, feminine, and out of place in the mud. Lucy pocketed it, her heart racing. Another trace of Anna, perhaps. She returned to the house, her mind churning. The hairpin, the glove, the cigarette case, all pointed to a woman of refinement, killed and discarded. The poisoned curry suggested the killer was still active, targeting Luther or another heir. Quimper's reaction to Anna's name was damning, but was he the murderer or merely a conspirator? That evening, Lucy sent another coded note to Miss Marple's chemist friend, enclosing a sample of the curry. Suspect poison in dish meant for Luther. Found hairpin near Oaks. Quimper evasive about Anna. Need guidance. L.E. As she sealed the envelope, she felt the house's weight pressing in, its secrets coiling tighter. The poisoned curry was a warning. The killer was close and unafraid. With Miss Marple's mind and her own resolve, Lucy knew they were closing in, but the danger was growing. Tonight she'd watch Quimper, and tomorrow the Oaks would yield more answers, or a body.
Chapter 7. Secrets on the Embankment. The frost-crusted dawn painted Rutherford Hall's grounds in shades of silver and gray, the railway tracks glinting like a steel vein through the estate's heart. Lucy Eyelesbarrow stood at her window, her breath fogging the glass, her mind a whirl of clues. The torn fabric, the broken watch, the blood-stained straw, the embroidered glove, the cigarette case with A.S. initials, the hairpin near the ups, and the poisoned curry that had nearly claimed Luther Crackenthorpe's life. Each discovery tightened the noose around the murder Elspeth McGillicuddy had witnessed on the 450 from Paddington, and Dr. Quimper's guarded demeanor pointed to a deeper role. With Miss Jane Marple now at the estate, her sharp mind guiding the hunt, Lucy felt the mystery's pulse quickening. Today, she would search the embankment where Alexander had seen a bundle thrown from a train, hoping to find the body, or what remained of it. Lucy dressed in a sturdy coat and boots, slipping the hairpin and a small trowel into her pocket. Her housekeeping duties, polishing the banisters, airing the linens, were a cover for her true purpose, to scour the railway's edge near the Oaks, where the tracks curved past Rutherford Hall. Alexander's story of a bundle, combined with Elspeth's vision of a strangled woman, suggested the body had been discarded there, hidden in the dense undergrowth. As she descended to the kitchen, the house was quiet, its inhabitants still stirring, and Lucy seized the chance to slip out unnoticed. The embankment was a tangle of brambles and frost-stiffened grass, the air sharp with the scent of damp earth and coal dust. Lucy moved carefully, her eyes scanning the ground. The oaks loomed ahead, their garnered branches casting long shadows. Near the base of the largest tree, where she'd found the hairpin, the earth was uneven, as if hastily disturbed. She knelt, her trowel probing the soil, and unearthed a scrap of fabric, a scarf, silk, and unmistakably red, its edges frayed but stained with dark, crusted smears. Blood. Her heart raced. This was the scarf Elspeth had described, a vivid link to the woman on the train. Lucy wrapped the scarf in her handkerchief, her fingers trembling with the weight of the find. The blood confirmed violence, and the scarf's location, near Alexander's bundle, suggested the body was close. She searched further, her trowel scraping through roots and mud, but found no more. The embankment was vast, and the killer had been clever, choosing a spot where nature could conceal their crime. She marked the tree with a subtle notch, planning to return with Alexander's help. Back at the house, Lucy hid the scarf in her suitcase, alongside the glove and cigarette case. She penned a coded note to Miss Marple, who was breakfasting with the family. Red scarf, blood-stained, found near Oaks. Matches Elspeth's description. Need Alexander's help to search further. Quimper's reactions troubling. L.E. She'd deliver it later when they could speak privately. At breakfast, the dining room was a cauldron of suppressed tension. Luther Crackenthorpe, his face sour as curdled milk, complained about the cold. Emma served silently, her eyes avoiding Lucy's. Cedric, Harold, and Alfred were present, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Cedric sketching, Harold reading a telegram, Alfred tapping his knife against his plate. Brian Eastley and Alexander entered late, the boys' cheeks flushed from a morning romp. Miss Marple, seated at the table's end, sipped tea, her frail appearance belying her keen observation. Lucy caught Alexander's eyes. She cleared plates. "Fancy a walk later?" she whispered. "I could use a guide to the grounds." Alexander grinned, nodding. "Meet me by the stables at noon. I know all the secret paths." As Lucy returned to the kitchen, she overheard Harold and Cedric in the hall, their voices low but heated. "You're too cautious," Cedric said, his tone sharp. "If we don't act, Alfred will ruin everything. He's been snooping again." Harold's reply was cold. "Let him snoop. He'll find nothing but trouble. Keep your own secrets buried." Lucy's pulse quickened. The brothers' distrust was palpable, and Alfred's snooping suggested he knew something about the murder, or the will. She filed the exchange away, her mind returning to the scarf. Its red silk was a beacon, tying the crime to Anna Stravinska, the dancer whose name had unsettled Quimper. At noon, Lucy met Alexander by the stables, a ramshackle structure smelling of hay and leather. The boy carried a stick, swinging it like a sword, his eyes bright with adventure. "You want to see the embankment, don't you?" he said, voice conspiratorial. "I know where the bundle landed. Follow me." He led him through a copse of birches, their white bark stark against the gray sky, to a narrow path that wound toward the railway. The embankment here was steeper, the tracks gleaming below. Alexander pointed to a ditch, half hidden by brambles. "There," he said. "I saw something fall from the train right into that ditch. It was dark, but I'm sure." Lucy crouched, her eyes scanning the ditch. The brambles were thick, but a glint caught her attention. A metal button, embossed with a crest, half buried in the mud. She pried it free, noting its weight and craftsmanship. It wasn't from a railway worker's uniform. It was too fine, perhaps from a coat worn by the victim, or the killer. "Good spot, Alexander," she said, pocketing the button. "Ever see anyone else out here?" He hesitated, glancing at the tracks. "Once. A man, tall, near the barn at night. I thought it was Dr. Quimper, but it was too dark to be sure." Lucy's heart skipped. Quimper again. She thanked Alexander, promising to share any treasures she found, and sent him back to the house. Alone, she searched the ditch further, finding only broken twigs and a faint trail leading toward the woods. The body, if it was here, had been moved, or hidden with care. Back at Rutherford Hall, Lucy found Miss Marple in the drawing room, knitting by the fire. She slipped her the note and whispered, "The scarf is a match, and a button, maybe from the killer. Alexander saw a man near the barn, possibly Quimper." Miss Marple's needles paused, her eyes narrowing. Anna Stravinska, a dancer known to the family, a red scarf, blood-stained, and now a button. The killer is careless, but cunning. Lucy nodded, her mind on Quimper. His charm, his closeness to Emma, his unease at Anna's name, all pointed to involvement. But was he the strangler, or protecting someone else? The poisoned curry suggested a broader plot, perhaps aimed at the Crackenthorpe fortune. That afternoon, Scotland Yard's Inspector Craddock arrived, summoned by Miss Marple's discreet inquiries through her nephew. He was a tall man with a no-nonsense air, his notebook open as he questioned the family in the library. Lucy served tea, listening as Craddock probed about the railway line. "We've had a report of an incident near your estate," he said, his tone neutral. "A woman, possibly harmed, on a train passing your land. Any unusual activity here recently?" Luther snorted, his cane tapping the floor. "Nonsense. My land's quiet as a grave. Your witness is dreaming." Craddock's eyes flicked to Emma, who fidgeted with her teacup. "Miss Crackenthorpe, anything odd? Strangers, disturbances?" Emma hesitated, her voice soft. "Nothing specific. The grounds are large, and poachers come through sometimes." Cedric leaned back, smirking. "Poachers, eh? Or ghosts? Alfred swears he saw a figure by the tracks last week." Alfred's face reddened. "I said no such thing. You're the one always wandering at night, Cedric." Craddock's ken scratched, his expression unreadable. Lucy noted the brothers' shaky alibis, each deflecting blame. Quimper, present to check Luther's health, offered a bland smile. "The family's been under strain," he said, "but nothing criminal, I assure you." Miss Marple, knitting quietly, spoke up, her voice frail but piercing. "Dr. Quimper, you travel the estate often. Ever notice anything near the railway? Say, a bundle or a stranger?" Quimper's smile stiffened. "I'm a doctor, not a watchman. The tracks are busy, but I've seen nothing unusual." Lucy caught Miss Marple's glance, a silent agreement that Quimper was lying. After Craddock left, promising to search the embankment, Lucy followed Quimper to the hall where he was donning his coat. "Long day, doctor?" she asked, her tone casual. "You must see all sorts of people coming and going." He turned, his eyes narrowing. "I keep to my patients, Miss Eyelesbarrow. Curiosity doesn't suit a housekeeper." The warning was clear, but Lucy smiled. "Just making conversation. Safe travels." As he left, she felt a chill. Quimper was hiding something, and his threat only sharpened her resolve. That evening, Lucy and Miss Marple met in the guest room, the door locked. Lucy showed her the scarf and button, their blood and crest gleaming in the lamplight. "The scarf's hers, and the button, it's not from the family's clothes. I checked their wardrobes." Miss Marple examined the button, her lips pursed. A crest, perhaps from a club or society. Anna was a danger to someone. Her knowledge, her presence, the curry, the scarf, the button, they're pieces of a pattern. "We're close, Lucy, but the killer's closer." Lucy nodded, her mind on the embankment. The scarf was proof of murder, the button a clue to the killer's identity. Tomorrow, she'd search the woods with Alexander, following the trail from the ditch. The body was out there, and with Craddock's involvement, the net was tightening. But Quimper's warning echoed, a reminder that the killer was watching. Lucy locked her door that night, the scarf hidden in her suitcase, its red silk, a silent cry for justice.
Chapter 8. The Will's Deadly Promise. The winter sun hung low over Rutherford Hall, casting long shadows across the frost-bitten grounds as Lucy Eyelesbarrow polished the silver in the dining room. Her hands moved with practiced ease, but her mind was a storm of clues: the torn fabric, the broken watch, the blood-stained straw, the embroidered glove, the cigarette case with AS initials, the pearl hairpin, the red scarf, and the embossed button found near the railway embankment. Each piece tightened the web around Anna Stravinska's murder, witnessed by Elspeth McGillicuddy on the 450 from Paddington. The poisoned curry, narrowly averted, pointed to a killer still active within the Crackenthorpe family, and Dr. Quimper's evasive demeanor marked him as a key suspect. With Miss Jane Marple's keen mind guiding her, Lucy was determined to unravel the family's secrets, starting with the will that seemed to drive their every move. The morning was crisp, the house stirring with the clatter of breakfast dishes. Lucy served tea, her eyes scanning the Crackenthorpes for tells. Luther, the patriarch, sat at the table's head, his face etched with suspicion as he sipped his porridge. Emma, pale and withdrawn, avoided Lucy's gaze, her hands trembling slightly. Cedric, the eldest son, doodled on a scrap of paper, his bohemian air masking a sharp intellect. Harold, the banker, read a ledger, his expression tight, while Alfred, the youngest, fidgeted, his eyes darting to the window. Brian Eastley and his son Alexander were absent, likely out exploring, but their absence only heightened the room's tension. "Miss Eyelesbarrow," Luther snapped, breaking the silence, "the coal's running low again. Don't waste it on fires we don't need." "Of course, sir," Lucy replied, her tone deferential, but her mind noting his obsession with control. The will, mentioned in hushed tones, was the key to his power and the family's discord. If Anna Stravinska had been a threat to that inheritance, her death made grim sense. As Lucy cleared the table, she caught a snippet of conversation between Harold and Cedric in the hall. "You're blind if you think Alfred's not scheming," Cedric said, his voice low. "He's been in Father's study, poking around." Harold's reply was icy. "And you're so innocent? Keep your own hands clean, Cedric, before you point fingers."
Lucy's pulse quickened. The study, where Luther kept his will, was a locked fortress, its secrets guarded fiercely. She resolved to investigate it, but first she needed to follow the trail Alexander had pointed to, the woods beyond the embankment, where a body might lie hidden. At mid-morning, Lucy met Alexander by the stables, his schoolboy cap tilted jauntily. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked, brandishing a stick like a treasure hunter. "The woods are creepy, but I know a path that goes right to the ravine." "Lead on," Lucy said, her coat pocket heavy with the trowel and a notebook for sketching any findings. The boy darted ahead, guiding her through a thicket of bare birches to a narrow trail that wound toward the railway. The ravine was a shadowy gash in the earth, its sides steep and tangled with roots. Alexander pointed to a cluster of pines. "That's where the trail gets weird. I found a rope there once, knotted funny, like someone tied it to drag something." Lucy's heart raced. A rope could mean the body had been moved. She followed him, her boots sinking into the damp earth, and found the spot, a clearing where the pines formed a natural screen. The rope was gone, but the ground was scarred, deep grooves suggesting something heavy had been pulled through. She knelt, her trowel uncovering a glint of glass. A vial, small and empty, its label faded, but legible. Arsenic! Her breath caught. Poison again, but this time it wasn't in the kitchen. This was deliberate, discarded evidence of a second attempt on Luther's life or someone's else. She pocketed the vial, wrapping it carefully, and scanned the clearing. A faint trail led deeper into the woods toward a stream that bordered the estate. "Anything else odd round here?" she asked Alexander. He shrugged, poking the ground with his stick. "Just birds and squirrels. But last week, I saw Dr. Quimper walking this way, carrying a bag. He looked mad when he saw me." Lucy's skin prickled. Quimper, again, linked to the very places where clues appeared. She thanked Alexander, sending him back with a promise of biscuits, and followed the trail alone. The stream was sluggish, its banks muddy, and there, caught on a low branch, was a shred of lace, delicate, feminine, stained with mud. It wasn't Anna's scarf, but it could be hers, another trace of the woman whose death haunted the estate. Lucy tucked it into her notebook, her mind racing. The vial and lace were new pieces, but the body remained elusive. Back at Rutherford Hall, Lucy found Miss Marple in the garden, bundled in a shawl, pretending to admire the frostbitten roses. Lucy slipped her a coded note. "Found arsenic vial and lace in woods. Quimper seen nearby. Study may hold Will's secrets, L.E." Miss Marple's eyes gleamed.
Her knitting needles tucked into her bag. "You're doing splendidly, my dear," she whispered. "The will is the heart of this. Luther's control over it breeds desperation. We must see it." Lucy nodded, her thoughts on the study's locked door. That afternoon she tackled the upstairs corridors, her polishing a pretext to linger near Luther's sanctum. The door was heavy oak, its lock gleaming, but the frame was old, slightly warped. She tested it gently, finding it firm but noting a faint scratch near the keyhole. Someone had tried to force it. Before she could investigate further, footsteps echoed, and she stepped back, polishing a nearby banister. Alfred appeared, his wiry frame tense. "Snooping, Miss Eyelesbarrow," he said, his tone half teasing, half sharp. "Father doesn't like his study disturbed." "Just cleaning," Lucy replied, meeting his gaze. "This house has a lot of dust. Ever lose anything in there? Papers, maybe?" Alfred's smile faltered. "You're sharp for a housekeeper. Keep out of Father's business or you'll regret it." He strode off, but his warning lingered, a confirmation that the study held answers. At tea, Inspector Craddock returned, his presence stirring the family like a stone in a still pond. He gathered them in the drawing room, his notebook open. "We've searched the embankment," he said, his voice calm but firm.
No body, but we found disturbed earth near the oaks. Any of you know about activity there, say, late at night? Luther snorted, his cane tapping. Poaches, probably. My land's plagued with them. You're wasting time, Inspector. Craddock's eyes flicked to Emma, who clutched her teacup. Miss Crackenthorpe, you manage the estate's affairs. Any visitors recently? Perhaps a woman? Emma hesitated, her voice soft. No one unusual. We had a party last month, but just friends and neighbors. Miss Marple, knitting quietly, spoke up, her tone deceptively mild. A dancer, perhaps. Anna Stravinska. I hear she was quite charming. The room stilled. Quimper, present to check Luther's blood pressure, coughed, his hand tightening on his bag. Anna? She was here briefly, yes. A guest of Alfred's, I believe. Nothing more. Alfred's face reddened. Don't drag me into this. She came, she danced, and she left. I barely knew her. Craddock's pen scratched, his eyes narrowing. Lucy caught Miss Marple's glance, a silent agreement that Alfred's denial was too quick. As Craddock questioned further, probing alibis for the night of the murder, Lucy slipped to the kitchen, where she overheard Brian and Alexander in the pantry. You shouldn't talk about the woods, Alex. It's not safe to poke around. But I saw something, Dad, Alexander insisted. A bag near the stream. It looked heavy. Lucy's heart skipped. Another clue, perhaps the killer's tools. She resolved to check the stream later, but first she needed to confront the will. That evening, as the family dined, Luther took a sip of his wine and choked, his face turning ashen. Quimper sprang to his side, loosening his collar. But Lucy's eyes were on the glass. A faint residue clung to its rim, a bitter scent rising. Arsenic again. Call an ambulance, Emma cried, but Quimper waved her off. He's fine, just a reaction, I'll handle it. He administered a shot, and Luther's color returned, but Lucy's suspicion deepened. The wine had been poured from a decanter she'd filled herself, untouched by others, except Quimper, who'd lingered near it. She sent a sample of the wine to Miss Marple's chemist, along with a note. Arsenic in Luther's wine. Quimper intervened, too quick. Alexander, saw bag near stream. Will try study tonight. L.E. As the house settled, Lucy crept to the study, her lockpicks, kept from a past adventure, hidden in her apron. The lock yielded with a soft click, and she slipped inside, her flashlight sweeping the room. The desk was cluttered with ledgers, but a hidden drawer caught her eye, its key missing. She pried it open, finding a single document, a draft of Luther's will, naming Emma as primary heir, but with a clause. If she married, her share would pass to her brothers. Lucy's breath caught. Emma's closeness to Quimper, the poison attempts, were they tied to this clause? She memorized the details and relocked the drawer, slipping out just as footsteps approached. Hiding in the shadows, she saw Quimper pause at the study door, his face grim. He didn't enter, but his presence confirmed her fears. He was watching, perhaps protecting his own stake. Back in her room, Lucy felt the mystery's weight. The will was the motive, Anna a threat to it, and Quimper a central player. The lace, the vial, the scarf, all pointed to a killer desperate to protect the inheritance. Tomorrow, she'd search the stream for Alexander's bag, with Craddock's help. For now, she locked her door, the will's words burning in her mind, a deadly promise driving the Crackenthorpes to murder.
Chapter 9. Unveiled Motives. The morning mist clung to Rutherford Hall's grounds like a shroud, softening the stark lines of the railway tracks that snaked past the estate. Lucy Eyelesbarrow stood in the kitchen, kneading dough for the day's bread, her hands steady but her mind racing with the clues she'd unearthed. The torn fabric, the broken watch, the blood-stained straw, the embroidered glove, the cigarette case with A.S. initials, the pearl hairpin, the blood-stained red scarf, the embossed button, the arsenic vial, and the shred of lace.
Each piece tightened the net around Anna Stravinska's murder, witnessed by Elspeth McGillicuddy on the 450 from Paddington. The poisoned curry and wine, both laced with arsenic, pointed to a killer still stalking the Krakenthorpe family. And the draft of Luther's will, naming Emma as primary heir, but with a marriage clause, suggested a motive rooted in greed. Dr. Quimper's guarded behavior and Alexander's sighting of a mysterious bag near the stream kept Lucy's suspicions sharp. With Miss Jane Marple's keen insight guiding her, Lucy was determined to uncover the truth, and today she would search the stream while probing the family's hidden ties to Anna. The kitchen was warm, the scent of yeast mingling with the tang of cold smoke from the hearth. Lucy's housekeeping duties, baking, dusting, managing the coal, were a cover for her real work, to find the bag Alexander had seen and unraveled the family's secrets. As she shaped the dough, Emma Krakenthorpe entered, her face pale, her eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. "You're a marvel, Miss Eyelesbarrow," she said, attempting a smile. "This house hasn't run so smoothly in years." "Just doing my job," Lucy replied, her tone light, but her eyes noting Emma's nervous hands. "You look tired, Miss Krakenthorpe. Everything all right?" Emma hesitated, twisting a ring on her finger. "Just family matters. Father's health, the estate, it's a lot to manage." Lucy nodded, sensing an opening. "Must be hard with so many opinions. I heard talk of a will. Sounds like it keeps everyone on edge." Emma's smile faltered, her voice dropping. "Father's particular about his affairs. It's best not to pry." She left abruptly, leaving Lucy with the distinct impression that the will was a wound the family couldn't stop picking. At breakfast, the dining room was a study in tension. Luther Krakenthorpe, his cane propped against his chair, grumbled about the cost of repairs to the boathouse. Cedric, the oldest son, ignored him, sketching a jagged landscape that resembled the railway embankment. Harold, the banker, scanned a financial report, his jaw tight, while Alfred, the youngest, sipped coffee with a restless energy. Brian Eastley and his son Alexander were present, the boy chattering about a bird he'd seen. But Brian's silence was heavy, his eyes fixed on his plate. Miss Jane Marple, knitting at the table's end, observed with her usual deceptive mildness. Lucy served bacon, her ears tuned to the family dynamics. As she passed Harold, he muttered to Cedric, "If you'd stop wasting time on your art, we might settle the land deal. Father won't live forever." Cedric's pencil snapped. "And you'd sell the estate out from under us? Some brother you are." Luther's cane slammed the table. "Enough! My land stays mine. You'll get nothing while I breathe." The outburst silenced the room, and Lucy slipped out, her mind on the will's clause. If Emma married, her brothers stood to gain her share, a motive for murder if Anna had been a rival heir. She needed to find that bag by the stream, and Alexander was her best guide. At mid-morning, Lucy met Alexander by the garden shed, his schoolboy cap askew, his eyes bright with mischief. "You're after that bag, aren't you?" he said, swinging a stick. "I can show you where I saw it, but it's mucky down there." "Lead the way," Lucy said, her coat pocket holding a flashlight and a cloth bag for evidence. They trekked through the woods, the air sharp with pine and damp earth, to the stream where the lace had been found. Alexander pointed to a bend where the water slowed, its banks thick with reeds. "There," he said, "I saw a bag, dark, maybe leather, half in the water." Lucy waded into the shallows, her boots sinking into the mud. The stream was cold, its current tugging at her ankles. She probed the wreaths, her flashlight cutting through the gloom, and spotted a glint, a leather satchel, wedged between rocks, its strap caught on a root.
She pulled it free, her heart pounding. The bag was heavy, its leather waterlogged, and inside she found a bundle of letters, their ink blurred but legible. One was addressed to Anna Stravinska, its tone urgent. "You must leave, they know." The signature was smudged, but the paper bore a faint crest matching the button from the embankment. Lucy's breath caught. The letters were a link to Anna's presence at Rutherford Hall and her danger. She tucked the satchel under her coat, thanking Alexander. "You're a sharp one," she said. "Keep this between us, all right?" He grinned, saluting. "Secret's safe with me." Back at the house, Lucy hid the satchel in her room, locking it in her suitcase with the other clues. She penned a coded note to Miss Jane Marple. "Found satchel with letters to Anna. One warns her to leave. Crest matches button. Stream may hold more. L.E." She'd deliver it at lunch, but first she needed to probe the family further. At noon, Lucy served a simple meal of soup and bread. The dining room quieter now. Luther was absent, resting from his wine scare, and Emma managed the table with a strained calm. Miss Jane Marple, sipping soup, turned to Alfred with a disarming smile. "You must know such interesting people, Mr. Crackenthorpe, living so close to London. Ever meet a dancer named Anna Stravinska?" Alfred's spoon paused, his eyes narrowing. "Heard of her, maybe. Why do you ask, old lady?" Miss Jane Marple's smile didn't waver. "Oh, just village talk. I hear she was quite the sensation. And a guest here, perhaps?" Harold coughed, his napkin pressed to his lips. "She was here for a party, briefly, hardly a guest. Alfred invited her, then she left."
Alfred glared at his brother. "Don't pin that on me. She came, she danced, she was gone. I didn't know her well." Lucy caught Miss Marple's glance, a silent agreement that Alfred's defensiveness was telling. As she cleared plates, she overheard Brian whispering to Emma in the hall. "You need to be careful," he said. "Those letters you hid, they could ruin everything." Emma's reply was sharp. "Keep your voice down, Brian. It's under control." Lucy's pulse quickened. Letters again. Were they the same as those in the satchel? She needed to see Emma's stash, but the library offered another opportunity. That afternoon, while dusting its shelves, Lucy noticed a book out of place, a worn copy of The Merchant of Venice, its spine cracked. Inside, a folded note slipped free, written in a hurried hand. Anna knew about the marriage. Tell no one. The note was unsigned, but its implications were explosive. Anna had known about Emma's potential marriage, perhaps to Quimper, and it had cost her life. Lucy pocketed the note, her mind racing. The will's clause, Anna's knowledge, the poison attempts, all pointed to a conspiracy within the family. She needed to confront Emma, but subtly. At tea, she found Emma alone in the drawing room, mending a shawl. "Miss Crackenthorpe," she said, pouring tea, "you must miss the livelier days here. That party with Anna Stravinska sounds like it was a hit." Emma's needle paused, her eyes wary. "It was just a gathering. Anna was charming but fleeting. Why do you keep mentioning her?" "Just curious," Lucy said, her tone light. "She seems to have left an impression. Did she know the family well?" Emma's face tightened. "Not particularly. She was Alfred's guest, as Harold said. Please, Miss Eyelesbarrow, focus on your duties." The rebuff was sharp, but Lucy saw fear in Emma's eyes. She retreated, her mind on the note and satchel. That evening, the library became a stage for confrontation. Luther, recovered from his scare, gathered the family to discuss the estate's finances, his voice booming. "No one's selling a blade of grass while I am alive. And this talk of wills is nonsense. You'll get what I decide, when I decide." Cedric laughed bitterly. "That's rich, Father. You've got us all dancing on strings, waiting for your scraps." Harold's voice was cold. "Some of us work for our keep, Cedric, unlike you, leeching off the estate." Alfred slammed his fist on the table. "Enough hypocrisy. We all know what's at stake. Anna did too, and look what happened." The room froze. Luther's cane trembled, his eyes blazing. "What's that about Anna? Speak, boy." Alfred paled, backtracking. "Nothing. Just she was nosy, that's all." Miss Marple, knitting in a corner, spoke softly. "Nosy about what, Mr. Crackenthorpe? A will, perhaps, or a marriage?" Alfred stormed out, and the family dispersed, their silence heavy. Lucy caught Miss Marple's eye, passing her the note and a whispered update. The satchel's letters mention Anna and a crest. The note in the book. Someone warned about her knowing too much. Miss Marple's needles clicked. Anna was a threat, Lucy. Her knowledge of Emma's plans, perhaps Quimper's, sealed her fate. The killer's close, but we need the body. Lucy nodded, her resolve hardening. The satchel, the note, the arsenic, they were closing in, but the killer was a shadow, slipping through their grasp. Tomorrow she'd search the stream again with Craddock's help. For now, she locked her door, the note hidden with her clues, its words a warning that the truth was near, but so was danger.
Chapter 10. The Final Curtain. The late afternoon sun cast a golden haze over Rutherford Hall, its rays piercing the frost-laden windows as Lucy Eyelesbarrow set the drawing room for tea. Her hands moved with practiced grace, arranging cups and scones, but her mind was a kaleidoscope of clues. The torn fabric, the broken watch, the blood-stained straw, the embroidered glove, the cigarette case with A.S. initials, the pearl hairpin, the blood-stained red scarf, the embossed button, the arsenic vial, the shred of lace, the satchel of letters, and the cryptic note about Anna Stravinska's dangerous knowledge. Each piece had led her closer to the truth of the murder Elspeth McGillicuddy witnessed on the 450 from Paddington. The poisoned curry and wine, both laced with arsenic, pointed to a killer within the Crackenthorpe family, and Dr. Quimper's guarded demeanor, coupled with his ties to Emma and the will's marriage clause, marked him as the prime suspect. With Miss Jane Marple's sharp mind guiding her, Lucy knew the final act was near. Tonight, they would gather the family and unmask the killer. The drawing room was a grand, faded space, its velvet curtains heavy with dust, its hearth crackling with a fire Lucy had stoked. She had arranged for Inspector Craddock to join them, his presence a quiet assurance that justice was at hand. Miss Marple sat by the fire, her knitting needles clicking, her frail appearance a mask for her razor-sharp intellect. The Crackenthorpes were due any moment, and Lucy's pulse quickened at the thought of the confrontation ahead. Emma entered first, her face pale but composed, her hands smoothing her skirt. "Miss Marple, you've been so kind to visit," she said, her voice strained. "Is there something special about this tea?" Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Just a little gathering, my dear, to clear the air. This house has been under a cloud, hasn't it?" Before Emma could reply, Luther Crackenthorpe shuffled in, his cane tapping a rhythm of irritation. "What's this nonsense? I don't need tea parties wasting my coal." Cedric followed, his paint-stained fingers fidgeting with a pencil, his bohemian air tinged with unease. Harold, the banker, entered with a stiff nod, his ledger tucked under his arm, while Alfred, the youngest, slouched in, his eyes darting nervously. Brian Eastley and his son Alexander arrived last, the boy's curiosity bright despite the room's tension. Inspector Craddock stood by the door, his notebook closed, his gaze steady. "Thank you for joining us," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "We've been investigating a serious matter, a murder, seen on a train passing your estate. We believe the answers lie here." Luther snorted, his cane jabbing the floor. "Rubbish! No one's been murdered on my land. You're chasing shadows, Inspector." Miss Marple set her knitting aside, her voice soft but piercing. "Not shadows, Mr. Crackenthorpe.
and Anna Strainska was strangled on the 450 from Paddington. Her body was thrown near your embankment, and evidence has been found. Fabric, a watch, a scarf, a glove, a cigarette case with AS initials, a pearl hairpin, a blood-stained red scarf, the embossed button, the arsenic vial, the shred of lace, the satchel of letters, and the cryptic note about Anna Stravinska's dangerous knowledge. Each piece had led her closer to the truth of the murder Elspeth McGillicuddy witnessed on the 450 from Paddington. The poisoned curry and wine, both laced with arsenic, pointed to a killer within the Crackenthorpe family, and Dr. Quimper's guarded demeanor, coupled with his ties to Emma and the will's marriage clause, marked him as the prime suspect. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "How do you know about?" Miss Marple's smile was gentle but unyielding. "The will names you primary heir, Emma, but if you marry, your share passes to your brothers. Anna learned this, perhaps through a lover in the family. She was a threat, and she was silenced."
Craddock nodded, his eyes on Alfred. "Mr. Alfred Crackenthorpe, you invited Anna. Where were you the night of the murder, December 20th? Alfred's voice was sharp. "In London, at a club. I told you, I barely knew her." Cedric laughed bitterly. "A club? With no witnesses? Convenient, Alfred." Harold's voice was cold. "Don't deflect, Cedric. You were out that night too, painting by the tracks, you said." Miss Marple raised a hand, silencing the brothers. Anna was strangled, her body thrown from the train, but the killer made mistakes. The scarf, the button, the vial. And then, to protect the inheritance, they tried to poison Mr. Crackenthorpe. Only one person had access to the wine, the curry, and Anna's secrets. All eyes turned to Dr. Quimper, who entered at that moment, his medical bag in hand. His smile was charming, but his eyes were wary. "Miss Marple, you're spinning quite a tale," he said, setting his bag down. "But I'm just the family doctor, here to keep Luther healthy." Miss Marple's voice was steel beneath velvet. "You're more than that, Dr. Quimper. You're Emma's suitor, desperate to secure her inheritance. Anna was your wife, wasn't she? Married in secret before you came to Rutherford Hall. She was an heir, a threat to Emma's share, and you killed her to clear the way." The room erupted. Emma cried out, "John, no!" Luther's cane crashed against the floor, and the brothers stared, stunned. Quimper's face drained of color, his charm crumbling. "That's preposterous," he stammered. "I never—" Lucy stepped forward, holding the satchel. "These letters, found by the stream, are addressed to Anna, warning her to leave. They bear your crest, Doctor, the same as the button on the embankment. And the arsenic vial? It's from your medical supplies. I checked." Craddock opened his notebook. "We've traced the vial to a batch you ordered, Dr. Quimper, and witnesses place you near the tracks that night, not in Brackhamhampton as you claimed." Quimper's hands clenched, his voice rising. "You have no body, no proof. This is a witch hunt." Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. "The body is hidden, but the clues are not. Anna was your wife, and you feared she'd claim the Crackenthorpe fortune. You killed her on the train, threw her body near the oaks, and hid it in the woods. The poison was to eliminate Luther, ensuring Emma's inheritance and your future." Emma sobbed, shaking her head. "John, tell them it's not true." Quimper's facade cracked, his voice a snarl. "You old hag, you know nothing!" He lunged for his bag, but Craddock was faster, seizing his arm. A vial fell from the bag, its label clear. Arsenic. The room gasped, and Lucy caught Alexander's wide-eyed stare, the boy clutching his father's hand. Craddock handcuffed Quimper, his voice steady. "John Quimper, you're arrested for the murder of Anna Stravinska and the attempted murder of Luther Crackenthorpe." Quimper struggled, his eyes wild. You will find nothing. The body's gone, washed away by the stream." Miss Marple's smile was serene. "Not quite, Doctor. Your carelessness betrayed you. The scarf, the glove, the letters, they all pointed here. And the stream? Inspector Craddock's men are searching it now." As Quimper was led away, Emma collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Luther's face was grim, his cane still. Cedric, Harold, and Alfred exchanged uneasy glances, their secrets exposed, but their guilt lesser. Brian hugged Alexander, whispering, "It's over, lad." Lucy and Miss Marple stepped into the hall, the fire's warmth fading behind them. "You were brilliant, Miss Marple," Lucy said, her voice low. "How did you know about Anna's marriage?" Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Village gossip, my dear, and a knack for patterns. Quimper's charm was too practiced, his interest in Emma too calculated. The letters confirmed it. Anna was his wife, a secret heir. He killed to secure the fortune through Emma." Lucy nodded, the weight of the case lifting. "The body's still out there. Will they find it?" "They will," Miss Marple said. "The stream's shallow, and Quimper's panic was telling. He hid her poorly, trusting the water to erase his crime." That evening, as the police searched the stream, Lucy packed her suitcase, her work at Rutherford Hall done. The family, shaken but relieved, began to mend their fractured bonds. Emma, heartbroken, vowed to rewrite the will, ensuring fairness. Luther, humbled, agreed, his grip on the estate loosening. Cedric, Harold, and Alfred faced their own reckonings, their alibis shaky, but their crimes lesser. Brian hugged Alexander, whispering, "It's over, lad." Lucy and Miss Marple took the evening train to St. Mary Mead, the carriage quiet, its windows reflecting the darkening countryside. "You did splendidly, Lucy," Miss Marple said, her knitting resumed. "You have a gift for seeing through the fog." Lucy smiled, the tension of weeks easing. "I learned from the best. Will you tell Elspeth?" "Oh, yes. She'll be relieved her eyes didn't deceive her. Justice is a fine thing, isn't it?" As the train rattled on, Lucy gazed out, the memory of Anna's red scarf fading. The killer was caught, the truth unveiled, and Rutherford Hall could breathe again. In St. Mary Mead, Elspeth awaited, her faith in justice restored. Miss Marple's cottage beckoned, its fire warm, its quiet a balm. The final curtain had fallen, and the mystery of the 4:15 from Paddington was solved, its terror laid to rest.